Okay, welcome to Jakarta EE10, Simplicity for Modern and Lightweight Cloud Applications. My name is Ivar Grimstad, and I represent the Eclipse Foundation as the Jakarta EE developer advocate there. And if you think this is a nice shirt, then I have two more of these, and a blue one. So whoever asks the question will get a t-shirt. So just don't be shy and ask questions. The three first, I mean. So, my Twitter and this new stuff and GitHub and my handles are here, so you can find me if you're on social media. I'm also involved in a lot of open source projects here and there, but it's mainly the Eclipse Foundation. I'm also a Java champion, and yeah, this is sort of what I do. This is where you can contact me if you have any questions or wonder about anything. Jakarta EE10 is out. It was released in September 22nd to be specific. We call it a community-driven, modernized, simplified, and lightweight version of Jakarta EE. And I hope we can dive into a little bit of these concepts and see if we actually achieve that in this talk. But before that, I just want to set the stage. We're talking about specifications here. Like Jakarta EE, that's all about specifications. And when we talk about specifications, we're talking about, in our concept, it's a specification document or some wording of a concept. It's an API that kind of also that defines the specification. And we have a test suite or a test compatibility kit that we use to verify that an implementation are fulfilling the requirements in the specification. And these are the compatible implementations. And we need at least one open source compatible implementation to call this a final specification. That is what we call it, to ratify the specification so we can release it. So we need at least one open source compatible implementation. After that, any implementations that want to implement the spec, that's fine. It doesn't have to be open source, but of course it's good if it is, but you can do any license you want. And Jakarta EE10 consists of all these specifications here. And you can see all the blue ones, they're the ones that were updated for the latest release. So since Jakarta EE9, all these blue has received updates, and those with a .0 after the version number are major updates. So these are potentially breaking changes, or they have so much new functionality that they wanted to have a major version. We try to do semantic versioning for the specifications. And those with a .1 after the specification name, those are the ones that had minor updates, that is smaller changes. You can see there are some gray boxes here, and those are the specifications that weren't updated for this release. That doesn't mean that they're not relevant or anything. It just meant that the version that were in Jakarta EE9 was good enough. So they didn't receive any updates. But some of them will probably be updated in the next release. It depends. And there's one orange down in the corner, CDI Lite. It's not a specification on its own, but we like to kind of flash it out a little bit because that's a new concept that we're introduced in CDI 4. And it's sort of a profile of CDI and can be used as a specification on its own. And I'll talk about CDI Lite a little bit later. So if you gray out some of these more enterprisey specifications, we're left with those specifications that are more targeting the traditional web applications. And this is the Jakarta EE10 web profile. And this is a subset of the platform. And these specifications are typically what you need to create a web application if you're using Jakarta EE technologies. And if you take away all things that have with the traditional web, the UI and all that kind of stuff, we're left with a stack of specifications that are targeting headless services or microservices if you want. And this is the brand new Jakarta EE Core Profile. And this is something we haven't had before. The web profile was introduced in Java EE6, so that has been with us for a while. But Core Profile is new in Jakarta EE10. And as I said, this is meant to target smaller runtimes and microservices or headless services, if you like. So you can see it's made for creating RESTful endpoints and the specifications and technologies you typically need to do that. For 10, we also raised the API source level. And we raised it from 8 to 11. And we also compiled all the APIs to Java SE 11. So there are no features above 11 in Jakarta EE10 APIs. But the tests and the TCKs are made to run with 11 and 17. And that means that most of the implementation are actually certified on 17. So Jakarta EE10 runs on 17, and it's actually proven to run on 17 because we verified it with the TCK. And the key here is that we tested for 11 and beyond. And with beyond, we mean 11 and 17. So let's go through a couple of these specifications. Not all of them, but a couple of them. And then we'll look at some demos as well. So security. Jakarta Security 3.0 was added features and evolved their API. And for those who don't know what Jakarta Security is, that is kind of an application developer-facing specification. So you can configure all your application in a vendor-neutral way within your application, and it's portable across implementations. And with 3.0, they introduced OpenID Connect. And you kind of used OpenID Connect before, but now it's done in a standard portable way and specified by the specification. So this is kind of the big feature of Jakarta Security. Other than that, they updated the other lower level, more SBI-like specifications for authorization and authentication. And these are underlying technologies that are used by the developer-facing security API. So you as regular Java developers would probably not use these APIs directly, but they are there underneath to provide the functionality that you can access through the security API. And they also spend a lot of time making sure this is a good structure and foundation for future specifications. And this is how you typically would define the OpenID Connect authentication mechanism. It's a handful, this annotation, I know, but it's very precise. It's add OpenID authentication mechanism definition. So if you annotate your configuration class with this, with the parameters for your OpenID Connect authentication provider, you're good to go. And you can, as you see, you can use expression language here as well, so you can hide away the actual details from the code. Persistence. So persistence is a minor update. They added some stuff that were requested by the community. And one of them were to use UIDs as basic Java types. So now you can use UIDs directly without doing the mapping yourself. The specification will take care of the mapping for you. You can use it as primary keys, as I'm doing here, or not. Using it as a primary key, I don't know if it's a good idea, but you can use it at any field in your entities. RESTful Web Services. They had originally planned a 4.0 with break-in changes and full integration with CDI, but they decided to stay on a minor update so they can maintain compatibility and just add stuff that the community really wanted. And one of them things the community has requested is standard support for multi-part form data. And this has been available in REST-easy and Jersey before, but now they kind of got together and did it in a standard way. So now we can upload files in a standard way through REST APIs using Jakarta REST. The other thing is the new Java SE Bootstrap API. And this is something that enables you to run Jakarta REST applications without running in an application server. So you can just create a jar and run it. And this is actually something I am going to demo. And my application here is using the Jakarta RESTful Web Services 3.1, and I'm using REST-easy 6.10, and it's just a simple hello world where I produce some JSON out. So let's look at that one. And I have the Bootyduke application here. The POM file says I'm using the Jakarta RESTful API, and then I'm adding 3 dependencies for REST-easy. Since I'm not running an application server, I have to give them my implementation myself. And here I'm using the REST-easy core, the undertow part for the web server, and also the JSON binding. So then I can produce JSON through my REST endpoint. And the application is very simple. It's just a hello world, as you see here. and it just says how did Jakarta RESTful Web Services, and you can see it produces application JSON when it gets the HTTP request, GET request at the hello path. And the configuration of this application is just saying use an empty context. So if I wanted to do this in the SE Bootstrap way, what I have to do is I have to have a main method in my application. So let's create a main method here. When I've done that, the next thing I have to do some little configuration. And before I do it, so I do the configuration there, and I do it very minimally. I just set the root path is bootyduk, and it's going to run on port 8081. So that's the only configuration I'm really doing. I could do more. It's a Fluent API, so you can add whatever you need for configuration there, but I'm doing a minimal thing here now. Then I will instantiate the application, and as you see, since I now have the main method in this complete Duk application, which is the definition application configuration for Jakarta REST, I'll just instantiate myself here. Otherwise, you would have to instantiate this one and not the class you have your main method if it's outside of this one. But yeah, you'll get it. It's this application you're instantiating. The next thing is to start it. And here, I just call SE Bootstrap.start. I'm passing the app and the config, and I just wait for a Control-Z, and I do some system on print lines there. So let's try this one. Let's open this one up a little. So. City bootyduk and Maven package. I'll just create my jar file, and then I'll run it there by Java jar target the bootyduk with the dependencies. You can use any Maven magic to create that jar file. I'm just using the assembly plugin here. And then you can see it's running here on port 8081 with the /hello endpoint. And you can see it says howdy. So it's fast up and running. It's very simple to configure. And you have Jakarta REST available for you without the application server. So just kill this again. So, Core Profile. Core Profile is targeting smaller runtimes. And the specification we're using for targeting smaller runtime is this subset of specifications. And you see we have the new CDI Lite. I'll get to that in a second. And then we have the specification we need for dependency injection and JSON binding and processing and Jakarta REST. And the smaller runtimes we're trying to kind of target is not necessarily these, but these are the ones that are Core Profile compatible as of today. And that is OpenLiberty, Payara, and Wildfly. But what we have in mind and what we're hoping for a little bit in the future is that Helidon, Quarkus, Micronaut, that kind of applications will be Core Profile compatible. And I think Helidon and Quarkus are working on it, at least Helidon maybe early next year. So let's see, these are kind of the smaller runtimes we're targeting with the Core Profile. And the key here is CDI Lite. And CDI Lite is a subset of CDI that is designed to work in more restricted environments. So you can still use injections and everything in CDI, but it's something what we call more restrictive. And with more restrictive, what we mean is we want to do the dynamic things of CDI at build time rather than at runtime. And that enables us to use technologies like GraalVM and create native images. Because if we can resolve all the dynamic things of CDI when we compile it, well, then we can continue that and create native binaries for it. And to be able to do that, they've created a new extensions API, because the CDI extension, portable CDI extensions is very dynamic by nature. So they created a new extensions API for build-compatible extensions. And they also changed the behavior of beans XML. So now an empty beans XML means all and not annotated. So this can sort of be an upgrade issue when you go from 9 to 10. It's also, they actually now require a beans XML. So previously, a non-existent beans XML would mean the same as an empty beans XML, which then again would mean everything is injectable. But that has been taken away. You have to have a beans XML to activate CDI, and then now it means annotated. So it's kind of a little bit more restrictive, but it's in a good way. They also removed some deprecations. So these are kind of the break-in changes in CDI. I want to do a demo, but before I do the demo of the core profile and the CDI, I want to take a little bit step back. How many were here when I did the talk last year at JFall? Okay, just a couple of you. So some of it will be similar to what I did, but I'll take it one step further. So what I'm going to do is to take one step back and go from Jakarta EE8, I'll take it through 9 and then to 10, and show what you have to think about when doing that. And the reason why I'm doing that is because of the namespace change in Jakarta EE8. And I realized that not everybody has done this namespace switch. And many of you maybe don't care because you don't use Jakarta EE or think you don't use Jakarta EE because you're using Spring. But guess what? If you're using Spring, if you're using Jetty or Tomcat or Hibernate or any other of these technologies that kind of is in the vicinity of Jakarta EE, you're probably going to be exposed to this namespace change. If you're going to upgrade to Spring 6 or Spring Boot 3 later this year, you're going to do the namespace change. It's going to affect you. So because that the Jakarta namespaces kind of rip through these APIs and also the dependencies you're using. So if you're saying, I just have a web app in Tomcat, then, well, probably you have to do it because Tomcat, the latest version, is on Jakarta namespace. The latest version of Jetty is on the Jakarta namespace. The latest version of Hibernate. And I could go on, because after a while, the Java X versions will probably not be maintained anymore. So you have to do the namespace change to get to Jakarta. And there are several ways you can do that. One is transformation. And there are tools out there. We have the Eclipse Transformer, and we have the Apache Tomcat migration tool. And these tools take the bytecode and transform it for you. So if you have a jar file, a WAR file on the JavaX namespace, you can just run it through these tools, and you have the Jakarta version ready for you there. So that's the simple way of doing it, especially if you have a third-party dependency that you don't have no control over. Just run it through the transformer and deploy that and use that dependency. There are also, the Spring team is creating toolings for upgrading the Spring applications, so you can use their tools, probably build in some of these transformer tools as well if you need it. But this is bytecode manipulation, so the source code will still be on JavaX. So that's kind of a step you do to test it out, or if you don't have access to the bytecode, or the source code. Then the IDEs also support this, and this is something I'll demo afterwards, that you can actually just do the namespace change in the IDE for you. And if you read carefully here, you can see that it will not affect usages of JavaX, SQL, Swing, XML, naming, transaction, etc., because those are not affected by the namespace. They are still in Java SE and are not affected by the Jakarta namespace. So it's only the Jakarta technologies that are moving the namespace. And the manual approach is to do it, follow these 6 steps. And I think these 6 steps will probably take care of most applications. And in most cases, you'll only need to do 1 and 2, and possibly 3. So it depends on how your application looks. And to do this, I have this Jakarta EE Duke application that kind of needs all the 6 steps. And this application is a simple hello world application. It reads a message from the database. It uses Jakarta persistence to get that message. I have Jakarta Enterprise Beans where I have my business logic around the hello world. And I'm using Jakarta REST to produce a Jakarta JSON, which is then using a Jakarta JSON binding to produce that. And I also have the Jakarta CDI extension to have a demo of that as well. Anybody using CDI extensions or coding extensions? No, so I'll go quickly with the extensions. So let's do these steps, and the first two steps I'll do in the IDE. And let's get rid of this one. There we go. So the complete Duke application, the first thing I'm going to do is to upgrade the my POM file. And I'm going to upgrade it to 9.1, because 9.1 supports Java SE 11. I'm still on 8 here, so I'll upgrade the Java versions as we go. So I'll do this, and the IntelliJ has this migrate packages where I can do this Java EE to Jakarta EE migration step, and I can just do a refactoring where it does the namespace change for me. So I can go in, and you can see in all my Java classes, they have now been converted to Jakarta. So that's one click, and then you're done. But you probably have to check that all of them actually were, but it usually works fairly well, that tool. So that was step 1 and 2. The next step is if you have any XML schemas, because we changed the schema namespace as well. And in my case, I have the persistence XML, which is using the sorry. So I have the persistence XML here, and you can see it's using the jcp.org namespace. So what we changed there is to change it from, we went from HTTP to HTTPS, that's one thing, and then we said we want to have it to be Jakarta.ee. And the rest is exactly the same. And I also will have to fix the schema location. And also the actual name over here. I did a typo here, didn't I? Yeah, usually do. So, a good thing you're awake. Haven't had any beer yet. So, and the version, what we do in Jakarta EE is always to have the version name and file name, so we're absolutely sure that you're using the correct version. And also, since I'm using the version here, I'll have to change it there as well. So, that's 0. So that is what you're going to have to do with all your XML files. If you're using web XML, Beans XML, persistence XML, or anything else, check that they're using the Jakarta namespace and the correct version. Then you're good to go. The next thing was the JavaX prefix properties, and you can see here I have 2 of those here for generating my database content, and this is as simply as changing JavaX to Jakarta. So you just have to go through your properties if you have them somewhere else. They may be an XML file or a properties file or somewhere else to remove the JavaX property prefix to Jakarta properties. So that was the step 1 through 4. The fifth step is for bootstrapping files, and that is, not everybody has bootstrapping files in their application, but if you're having CD extensions, you do. And the bootstrapping file for CD extension is here in the media services, where you have this text file that lists the extensions classes with a fully qualified class name. And the name of this file is Java X Enterprise Inject SPI extension. So this one also have to be changed by renaming it to Jakarta Enterprise. So it's very consistent everywhere, where everything Java X to Jakarta. So it's not that difficult to do. It's just something that you kind of need to do sort of carefully. So then I've done the bootstrapping files as well. And the dynamic data, that is, if you're having something, if you're building these properties, for example, by concatenating strings, then we may be reading it from the database or somewhere else. So let's run this application and look at how this may look. So I'll start up my Jakarta EE10 application, which is Glassfish 6.2. And as soon as it's up and running here, see here, open in a new window, I'll add the complete Duke application. And when I've added it, I'll deploy it. And look at if it's happening in the log. And here you can see it do write hi there in the log. And that comes from the CDI extension, which is looking for the @Duke's annotation, and it's printing Duke's message is when it finds this annotation. So this is the CDI extension. I won't go into detail about that one, since you probably, if you're using it, you're probably familiar with it. If you're not using it, it's kind of, yeah. But let's look at how this works. And I think I've forgotten which port this is running on. I'm guessing to, yeah. So here you say the application says, how did Jakarta EE8? And this is the dynamic things, right? Because I didn't change the database. So I'm reading the message up and saying, hey, EE8. But there may be other things that you have dynamic, if you're concatenating a class path or a property or something. In my case, it's just a message, so it's fairly easy to fix. So I'll go select from greeting, and then I'll write howdy Jakarta EE9. There we go, and commit it, and now the message is correct. So this is kind of the dynamic features of this application. So next step, I'm going to just go in and take this this generation I did of the test data and just comment that out, so I don't rewrite the database with hello Jakarta EE8 again. So we'll keep the night message. I won't run this one. So I comment out these for the future. And what I'm going to do now is to take and say, hey, let's beef up the Java version, because who's on 8 these days? And what I want to do is I'll go directly to 17, because I'm cool. And let's go to 17, and now we're running this Jakarta EE9 application on 17, which doesn't really support 17, or it doesn't say anything about it. So, but let's try. And to do this, I'll add something that were introduced in 16, but it's there in 17, and I'll use a record here. So we're sure we have some 17 features. Record. And this one should have a message, and I'll have a local date. So this is my record. I define it with these 2 fields, and I'm going to deploy this one. But important to know is that in the Duke's feature, I now realize that I actually didn't walk you through this application, but let's take this one from the top. I'm doing the @GET request. I'm injecting the EJB here. That is a Duke service. It's returning application JSON. I'm calling the find greetings method on the service. This stateless session bean is injecting a Duke's repository with CDI here, and I'm calling the findAll method on that. And the findAll method is a repository injecting the entity manager from Jakarta Persistence. And I'm using the criteria language here to do select everything from Duke's greeting. And Duke's greeting is my entity. It's in the greeting table. It has an ID, message, and email field. So this is my entire application. And in the Duke's service application, this is where I do the business logic. And the business logic here is to find it all, take the first one, or hard code. And what I've done now is, rather than in the previous version, I was returning my entity through the REST API. So I'm exposing my database structure through the REST API, as you saw in the response there. It's the email and the message. And you may not want to expose this in your data model in the REST API. So I'll use the record I created here as a sort of a data or a data object in between. So I'll return this record through the REST API. And in the Duke's greeting service, I'll also return this record. And in the business logic, when I found the first greeting from the table, I'll map the greeting to a record. And I'll get the message from the database, and I'll use local date of today. And if I don't find anything, I'll hard code the record and use hi, and for the date, I'll also use local date now. You with me so far? So now I'm kind of mapping it, my entity to a record and returning it. The problem, however, is that Jakarta EE9 isn't really meant to work with this Java 17. It's for 11, and the record here has the access methods, or the getters are called date and message, and the versions of JSON binding that are on 11 are expecting a Java bean, which has a getter. So it has to be get date and get message. Otherwise, it wouldn't return anything. So what I can do then to make this work in Jakarta EE9 is this dirty hack of calling my fields get date and get message. And when I've done that, I can redeploy the application to my Glassfish, and you'll see it when it has redeployed. Oh, I have some compilation. Oh, yeah, this one. Let's fix the compilation error. Go back to Glassfish, redeploy, and when it's redeployed, you can see it now has a date and message. And it doesn't say get date and get message, because it's a getter, etc. So that's how you can get 17 to work with 9. But we don't stop there. Now we want to go to 10. So the next thing we're going to do is upgrade this application to Jakarta EE10. And to upgrade it to Jakarta EE10, the only thing we need to do is to fix the POM. So I'll go with version 10. I'll reload this one, and we're good to go. So let's deploy this one to Glassfish 7, which is the Jakarta EE10 implementation. So let's have it there. Take the artifacts, the complete Duke, and go there and deploy it. Oh, sorry. Isn't deploying? There. Deploy. And we're up and running. So what I have to do here is to go to localhost, and now it's port 8080. Complete Duke, hello. And it crashes. What happened there? Right? It says EDB exception, but if you dig this in the log, you'll find that it has this famous weld something, so it is CDI related. And if you remember from CDI 4, that it has some backward incompatibilities. Right? So first of all, I will need a beans XML. So add a beans XML, And when I've added the beans XML, let's make sure this is version 4. And the schema location should also be version 4. And you remember, the default is annotated, and I have everything in my app is annotated, so I can actually just remove this last line and have the smallest possible beans XML. So now I added a beans XML, and let's deploy it to the redeploy. There we go, and run it, and you see it works. But now we can see it's get date and get message, because 10 actually supports 17. So now we can take this dirty hack we used in the previous version and get rid of it. So this is a good reason. Don't run with 9 in production. Use 9 as a step for your conversion. But when you have verified it, upgrade to 10, because you see it's much easier to upgrade to 10. It's just a beans XML file, and then you're good to go. So that was from 8 to 10. And we also have the core profile. So let's also take a sneak peek at core profile. You remember this application. If I'm running a core profile, I don't have any persistence or EJBs or anything available. So I'll just have the Duke service will be a CDI bean. And I'm going to I have to change the portable extension to a build compatible extension. And I won't do that in code. I will just do a quick walkthrough of how the code looks. So the core Duke, the only thing this application that differs from the others is that the resource is the same. I'm using the same record here, but the Duke service is now, I'm using request scopes. It could be application scopes or any CDI scope. But I'm using request scope here for the service, which used to be the EJB. And this is just hard coding how to core. So I'm not doing anything fancy here. But the major difference here is, first of all, in the POM file, I have the core API. So I don't need to have the full Jakarta EE. It's still provided, so it doesn't matter what dependency here. But then you limit the application developer to only use these APIs. And it's on Java 17. Otherwise, the POM is identical. The big difference is the extension. And the extension here is implementing the build compatible extension. Whereas in the other application, this one, it has the SPI, the Enterprise Inject SPI extension. So it's a different interface you're implementing. But also the programming model is a little bit different. Whereas in the old case, I implement some methods and observers. And in the new one, I have these lifecycle annotations for CDI extensions, which are enhancement and discovery and some others. But otherwise, it's doing exactly the same thing. So the other thing that is also different is that the bootstrapping file, which used to be called Jakarta Enterprise Inject SPI extension, is now called in core. It's called Jakarta Enterprise Inject Build Compatible SPI Build Compatible extension. It's a long name. You don't have to remember it because it's actually the class path for the interface you're implementing. So if I run this in Wildfly, which is core profile compatible, I'll just start it. I have core running here, so it should be picking it up. And let's deploy it so we can see if the extension works. Okay, for some reason, oh, I know what it is. I've upgraded the Wildfly version, and it's not reading I don't have the log configuration, but I think it's on port 883. No, it's not. Okay, I have a port conflict, I guess. So somewhere this one is not working. So bear with me there. Let's go one step, Ivar, if you want to get started with Jakarta EE. And I'll show you how simple this is and how to get from you have nothing until you're running in the cloud in 3 clicks. So I'm using Payara Cloud, which is a managed service by Payara. And I'm going to use the brand new Jakarta EE starter. So let's go and open the starter, and let's hope the internet works for us here. And you can see here, it's startjakarta.ee. So remember that URL, startjakarta.ee. For this one, Payara Cloud only supports Jakarta EE8, so I'm going to choose the 8 minimal archetype. I'm just going to keep all this stuff here. Copy this, which is actually automatically copied by clicking on it, and Ivo is sitting there. He's the one who created this, so thanks, Ivo. And let's open a terminal. Let's get rid of this one. Open a terminal. Go here, and just run this archetype. And if the internet works, it should generate it for us. So you see it. I just selected the Jakarta EE version, and it generates stuff for me. It's not very complex stuff that it's generating, but let's look at it. What you're seeing here is the POM file. Let's get rid of this. This one is Jakarta EE8, so it's on SE8, and it has the provider dependency of Jakarta EE8. And the sources are just the application configuration, okay, which is just the application file, and the resource, which produces a application JSON hello from Jakarta EE8. And let's call this Jakarta EE wants, let's call it Dutch sushi. I wonder what that is. So I'll compile this one, and it's compiled. So the next thing I'm going to do is to upload it to Payara Cloud. And this is also where the internet may have some effect on this demo. Let's see if it works here today. Please don't surf on the Wi-Fi right now. So I've created this namespace. And in this namespace, I can upload an application. And let's see if it does anything. Okay. I was afraid of this. So what will happen here is that I will get one simple dialogue, and this dialogue will prompt me for a WAR file. And I'll take the WAR file I just compiled after running the archetype, and I'll click deploy. And then it will run. So unfortunately, the internet is not on my side here today. So I'll leave this running in the background and see if it catches up. Otherwise, ping me afterwards, and I'll demo it in the hall or something, or try it out yourself. It's really cool. But the start Jakarta.ee is a way to get started with the EE8, 9, and 10 in the easiest possible way. So beyond 10 is, well, 11. And 11 has started, and what we're discussing now is release cadence. It's a hot topic right now. Should we have some regularity and predictability about these releases? And there seems to be getting somewhere to establishing some sort of release cadence. And this release cadence will most likely depend on the Java SE LTS versions. And as you know, right now, Java SE 17 has been out for a while. And Java SE 21 is coming next year. So 21 will be the next LTS. Should we have the API sources on 17 or 21, or how are we going to align it? And this is one way we could do it, to align it on 17. But we may also say that, hey, let's jump past 17 and go to 21 directly. And we most definitely will make sure that EE11 runs on 21 and above. but we may also actually see some 21 features in the APIs if that's what the community and the vendors and everybody wants. So these are discussions that are going on now. So if you have any viewpoints or input about this, this is the time to voice your concern or tell which direction, how far in Java SE versions should we go, because this is happening right now on the mailing lists, in the weekly calls, in the monthly calls. This is what we're discussing right now. Other things that are on the map is Jakarta config. It's a brand new specification based upon microprofile config and a little bit other kind of configuration solutions, and that is to standardize how configuration is done in Jakarta EE. And done in an environment-aware way, so you don't have to rebuild your application with new configuration if you move it from an environment to another. If you're running it in Kubernetes, it will pick up the config there. If it's running somewhere else, it will pick it up there. And you can use CDI or programmatic API to just inject the properties, and everything else will be taken care of. Jakarta MVC has been around for a while. It's action-based MVC control pattern, and it builds on Jakarta REST. It has a couple of annotations that you typically would annotate your REST resources with, and then you would have a controller in the MVC world. And these are the @controller and @view annotations, and a couple more. So you can very easily use everything you know about Jakarta REST and create web applications. We don't know if that's going to make it into the platform or if it will be a standalone application, but please try it out and say what you want. And when server-side rendering is back, then this is the technology to use. Jakarta NoSQL is standardizing integration with NoSQL, kind of the way that Jakarta Persistent does it with SQL databases. It's Jakarta NoSQL to have some standard APIs to use NoSQL. Jakarta RPC will standardize gRPC within Jakarta EE. And this is a new specification. All of these have more or less just been started, and all of them have mailing lists, and all of them have GitHub repositories and issue trackers. So this is kind of where we're asking for input. So just join there if you have any knowledge about this or any views of how and which direction these specifications should go. Jakarta Data is also started to standardize the repository pattern for data access. If you mean that maybe it should be active record rather than repository, well, tell them and see where we can go. This is a project that also started recently, and they are fairly active. They have, I think, bi-weekly calls, so you can join and discuss it with these people. Think Spring Data to generate everything, so you just have an interface. Jakarta Functions, that's my favorite, but that's nothing that has been suggested yet. So if you think that functions could be something we should standardize around, why not tell us? And what I mean here is some sort of standardization around cloud functions, so it's easier for us as Java developers to create cloud functions, whether it's on API level or deployment or whatever level, I don't know yet, but it would be nice to see some efforts around this. So, to sum up, Jakarta EE9 was all about the namespace. That's what's hitting us or you now. And be prepared to do some namespace updates in your application in the future. Jakarta EE10 brought a lot of new specifications, a lot of new cool small features. I've shown some of them here today, but there are more. So please do go to jakarta.ee, check it out, and tell us what you think. The core profile is brand new, targeting smaller runtimes, making it possible to combine Jakarta EE applications to native. Jakarta EE10 requires Java SE 11, but runs fine on 17. And for more information, go to jakarta.ee. That's also where you can find the link to the starter I showed. You have Jakarta Blogs, which is a blog aggregator for blogs. So if you write a blog, you can get listed there as well. It's a very simple process for doing that. I write a blog. It's also on Jakarta Blogs, but it's also on my domain. So the hashtag Jakarta EE is a weekly update from what's happening in Jakarta EE world. And the demos from this application is called Jakarta EE Duke. If you don't remember this URL, just Google Jakarta EE Duke, and I'm pretty sure you'll find it. So thank you very much for your attention, and please do rate the session in the JFall app. And remember, the 3 first questions get a T-shirt. The rest get a sticker. Thank you. All right.
Would you advise converting an existing older WAR file application running in Tomcat? Would it be beneficial to convert it to the Jakarta Core, for example? I see a lot of stuff showed in Core.
Okay, so the question is, if you have an existing Java application running on Tomcat, if I would recommend converting it to Core profile. I would say it depends on what you're using. If you're using Servlet, for example, then Core is not a thing for you because Servlet is not a part of Core. So then you'd probably be still on Tomcat, but I would still do the namespace switch so you can run on Tomcat 10. Yeah. So the question is core profile versus microprofile. And that's a good question. And core profile is actually made on request from microprofile, because with core profile, microprofile can point to that specification and say, hey, we are based on core profile and we have these add-ons on top of it. So they can actually test that they have the same foundation. So core profile TCK will most likely be required by microprofile to be certified as microprofile. So it's kind of a help to microprofile to have this bundle of specs they are depending on. The third shirt up there. Okay, so the question is the SE Bootstrap demo. I didn't have any application server. I used RESTful Core and RESTful Undertow, and Undertow is the web server of RESTful. Yes, if it started automatically, yes, the SE Bootstrap API kind of makes sure it runs. I could have added the corresponding Jersey dependencies or any other implementations, but you need to provide the dependencies for the implementations in the POM file, so it's packaged in the WAR, so you can run it. Anyone else? Yes. Okay, so do I have any advice of how to deal with dependencies that are using Java X and not Jakarta? So if you have control of the source code of those dependencies, convert them. If you don't have control of the source code of those dependencies, help that project do it. If it's an open source project, contribute that conversion to them. If it's a dead project or you don't know who is maintaining it, use the transformers and transform the bytecode and handle the dependencies yourself. We have a list on our GitHub on Jakarta EE where we have listed tools, dependencies, libraries, and etc. that has done the migration. What we have in mind is also put that more central on the web page and also maybe list some APIs that need help to get that conversion done. So. Yes? Oh, sorry, I speak up a little. Okay, so the question is whether we have any streaming APIs. No, not currently. But I know that there are some discussions about whether where it could fit in and whether it should be standardized and stuff. So if you have any kind of input on that, we have the community mailing list, which is kind of the first place where things get started to discussed. And maybe we, if it kind of gets traction, we bring it up in the platform or somewhere else. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for listening. Those 3 of you who earn T-shirts, come here and get them. The others, there are stickers there, and I have more stickers as well. Thank you very much.